All right, Dana, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am looking forward to our conversation.
I am too. You're all about time, and I want to learn everything. So before I jump in and pepper you with all of the questions, just start off telling us who you are, what you do, how you got into this work, why it's important to you. Let's start there.
Yeah. So based in San Francisco, I worked in tech for years and years and years. And I myself and a lot of the people that I worked with, I realized that while we loved a lot of what we were doing, there were certain frustrations in just your day to day. They are not
Mhm.
the things you are trained on. They are not your primary skill set. And you are lucky if you get support in doing those things. And so I went and got my coach certification and realized that this was a great way to support the kinds of people that I knew had so much potential to be successful in their career, but even more potential to be successful in their lives. And so I am delighted to help busy professionals uh, be successful and stop ignoring their personal lives. I work a ton with people in tech, but I also am pretty target agnostic these days. I think we're all suffering from a lot of the same challenges.
Yeah. So what we, because now I'm curious, I'm like, give me, like, what's a for example? You're like, I like to help people, because it sounds like both. You help them become to, I don't know, if level up, reinvent, expand, explore in their, not only in their career, but also in their life. What might that look like?
Yeah, I think for one thing, we are whole people.
Yeah.
And as much as people come to me for their professional concerns, we can't figure out what your professional life looks like unless we know what your life looks like.
Hmm.
And so people come to me a lot of times when either they are looking to level up, they're not getting the recognition that they want that promotion, they want that raise, or they just want the juicy projects that they want to
Hmm.
work on. I also work with people who have been promoted, are stepping into leadership and they're not getting the support that they want and aren't sure that they are skilled to lead in the way that they want to. Um,
Uh-huh.
Pretty much a lot of the people who come to me, they're at a pivot point in their career and they're just not sure what kind of now to retirement looks like.
Uh-huh.
And so they're trying to figure out, is that a pivot? Is that a leap? Is that just better life balance so that they can enjoy their kids while they're still young, help their parents who are aging, whatever it is that's coming to you. So
Hmm.
it really is looking at how do we be effective during our days to be successful, but to create the life that we want.
Okay, well, let's start there. I want to be successful. I want to be effective in my day, Dana. So tell us, I know one of the things that you utilize is what you call the career control framework. Is that part of what you're talking
Abs-
about here? You help us be effective.
Absolutely.
Okay, tell us
Yeah.
everything. Okay.
Yeah. So the career control framework that I work with is just as I started working with clients more and more, I realized there were a few pieces that everybody wanted to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
So one is clarity. So
Mm-hmm.
we can't be successful unless we know what successful looks like to us. Um, right now, it might look different also than it used to. It might look
Yeah.
different in the future. We also want to be clear about what's important to our company, what's important to our manager, what's important to our partner, what's important to those that we want to be as a part of our life. So
Mm.
taking some time kind of upfront, but also knowing that that's an iterative process and we're going to want to
Yeah.
keep coming back and adjusting and saying like, oh, I thought that's what I wanted, but maybe
Mm-hmm.
what I want is something a little bit different.
Yeah. So I like tell me what you find because I a lot of times people don't define the success, right? Like this is what I see, right? We don't know. And a lot of times they're looking external. So it can be a little bit wobbly when you're like, no, no, what's your, if we're getting clarity, we're talking about centering you and getting clarity. So what do you see in that arena and how do you help people kind of lean into that, especially for those of us, maybe we're being a little autobiographical here, those of us who especially when you're working and you're like, what is the measuring stick that somebody else has given me? And I'm constantly trying to effort towards the gold star that has been identified by some sort of external entity. And now we're like, okay, let's get clarity on what you want. And
But
sometimes people are like, deer in headlights. What do you mean? Yeah.
yeah. Well, what's funny is you really sort of intimated on something that I think comes up again and again is we actually think we're clear a lot of the time.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
so we're
Uh-huh.
wondering why all of these things that I've been driving toward aren't making me happy, aren't getting me
Uh-huh.
the kind of life that I want to build. And so taking some time, I really kind of walk people through the four keys of clarity.
Okay.
So the first is reflection. So
Mm-hmm.
When have I been happy? When have I been fulfilled? When have I not? What drives me crazy? When do I totally get into the zone? What am
Hmm.
I doing in my day right now that lights me up and what not so much?
Yeah.
So getting clarity on that then helps us bring that into what are our values. So a
Mm.
lot of those things where we're shining, there's something underneath that that is one of our core values that's
Uh-huh.
being met. And when we've got that friction and that discomfort, it's something in our core values oftentimes is not being met. So helping to
Mm.
identify those can help us make decisions really about what it is that we want.
Okay.
And then we play with vision. And so we
Okay.
look at, okay, so what could this look like to me? But
Hmm.
we tend to tie our vision to what we know. And
Yeah.
so what I love to do is play around with that and be like, okay, if you want, for example, a big, beautiful house, maybe it's
Hmm.
not the house. Maybe it is the status,
Hmm.
because you're told that this is what you should get. Maybe it's the safety for your family. Maybe it's being in a space of beauty. And so by uncovering those things, we start to identify not only where you're going to go, but
Yeah.
what can you start doing more of now so that you can bring the beauty, the safety, whatever it is into your life.
Okay.
Um,
Amazing.
and, and then the fourth key is gaps. So all of this
Okay.
has been internally, like, what do I think? What do I want? But there's
Uh-huh.
things we don't know. So
Yeah.
if you have an area that you've been really interested in exploring, but you're not as familiar, so how are you going to do research, talk to people, and then start to try things on to see again, like we talked about, this is going to be iterative. We're going to learn
Yep.
new things and we're going to
Hmm.
figure out like this idea that I had about what that is. How do I test that?
Yeah.
And figure out how do I bring that into something that's truly me?
Yeah. How do you find people respond? Like I'll just say,
Yeah.
like that can be hard again for like high performers like who are trained in like there's a test, right? Or like I have to get this right. So when we're leaning into the iterative, I mean, this is the work we do with clients all the time, right? Is can we be a beginner? Can we be exploratory? Can we approach this with the intention of not getting it right, but of
Mhm.
getting information? Right?
Yeah.
Like, what do I like about this? What works? What do I want more of? What do I want less of? Tell me what, tell me if
Yeah.
you have a wildly different experience, or tell me what it looks like in your experience.
No, I think it's so true. One of the reframes that I like to do with a lot of my clients is really thinking about life as a series of experiments.
Yeah, same.
So we have a hypothesis
Yep.
that may or may not be true. So
Uh-huh.
how do we start to test that and figure out what are the variables that we can play with
Yeah.
that are then going to give us new information and different results? It also gets us away from this success failure mentality
Yep.
where everything is black or white. And so again, we can get out there and we can be more playful. We can start
Hmm.
to do things because I do think we can get really locked into this idea, and it might be an old idea. It might be
Yeah.
from other people. And, it might not be working for us today, but we're still kind of hung up on it. And so, how do we start to shift that? Because at the end of the day, we know that there's something that's not working for people.
Mm.
And so, if your life is fantastic,
Yep.
great.
Yeah.
I am happy for you.
Yay, you.
But if there is something that's not working for you, how do we play around with that?
Yeah.
And again, let go some of our preconceptions. Some of the things that worked for us before are not going to work for us forever. And so we have to be willing to kind of play with that and try things on.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm like, are we brain doppelgangers, Dana? Like, I love a good hypothesis
Right?
experimentation. And I love that last little permission slip you sort of dripped in there that what worked for us at some point doesn't work for us forever. And I talk a lot about like the past version of you, what they wanted, that matters.
Yeah.
And also what the current version of you wants matters too. But we have a lot of story around making a decision and it's successful if we choose it forever, right? Like there's a
Yeah.
lot, like when it comes to career or
Yeah.
relationships, or even like you mentioned
Yeah.
health, like
And just
there's,
identity of who we think we are.
yeah, yeah. So that permission slip that you get to choose again, you get to
Yeah.
redecide. And that doesn't mean that you're flaky, you failed.
No.
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, did I derail us from the career? So we
Okay, so
started with
that was
clarity. That
clarity.
was all under clarity.
That
Okay.
was all under clarity. Now, the next section that we really focus on, which has to do with kind of time and everything, is I still use the word productivity, even though
Okay.
it doesn't totally resonate in the same way it used to.
Hmm.
But it really is about once we're clear about what we want to do, how can we be the most effective
Mm.
with our time to doing that? And
Mm-hmm.
again, we're talking whole life.
Yeah.
So this is incorporating not only what are our professional goals, but what are our personal goals, our health
Uh-huh.
goals, all of those things. And so how do we figure out like where am I going to get the most bang for my buck? We talk a lot about all of the productivity tips that people talk about, but how do we use them so that they're going to work for us?
Yeah.
Is this something
We
that
love efficiency, Dana. Tell us
we
everything. Most
love
things. We're all
efficiency?
leaning in.
Oh, and so
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where we've tried things in the past and maybe they haven't worked for us. And so it's a question of like, did that system not work? Again, how do I pick it apart? Is it a muscle that maybe I need to build up so that it works
Mm-hmm.
a little bit differently? Or again, is there just a little piece to that that I want to change? Because there are tips aplenty out there.
Right.
But one of the things that I really talk about is again, once we've done the clarity work, now we want to figure out how does that fit into our lives?
Right.
So are we doing, I'm going to say a lot of planning here.
Uh-huh.
Are we doing year planning, month planning, week planning, and day planning?
Mm.
Again, this isn't to add more to our plates. This is to be intentional about
Yeah.
what's really going on and what you want to happen. Because we're
Mm-hmm.
so reactive in our lives to all of
Mm-hmm.
these things that we think are urgent, and we do kind of think they're important in the moment. But if we step back and look at what's really important to us, we have way
Mm.
more control than we think we do to be focusing our energy effectively on those things.
Uh-huh. So we love to talk about blocks around here. We love to get unblocked. So we identify the blocks. So tell me, what do you notice um in that like when it comes to because you're like you kind of gave us a you're like disclaimer, y'all, I'm about to say the word plan a lot,
Yeah.
right? And so it lets me know people, and I know I can even feel myself. I'm like, oh God, the time blocking and putting it on the calendar and then following through with what's on the calendar. What do you find is like some of people's biggest blocks to one, putting it on the calendar, and two, actually following through and executing with what's on the calendar?
Yeah. I think a lot of us like to feel like we have freedom
Yeah.
in
Mm-hmm.
our lives, in who we are, in our being. We want to be flexible during our days to kind of do what we want, depending on what we feel like,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. And I think there's the fear that by looking at that and sort of blocking things in, that we're taking away our personal freedom. So
Mm-hmm.
we really rebel against that. But
Mm-hmm.
the truth of the matter is, if you want that freedom, kind of need to plan for that
Yeah.
freedom.
Create it.
Create it. You do.
Yeah.
Because I am absolutely not saying that you need to fill every moment of your day with a task. This is
Right.
absolutely not about like doing more and filling up more of that space.
Yeah.
Again, it's being intentional about what do I want the space for? And
Yeah.
how do I create that space again, as opposed to going in and reacting and being at the mercy of everything that's happening to us? Let's take
Right.
control and let's start finding ways to create that. And so those time blocks may be, for me personally, like I like color coding
Mm-hmm.
so that, the time blocks that I put in, I know I can move those blue blocks around. But I
Uh-huh.
have a sense for, okay, how much time do I
I
really?
literally use my blue blocks for the things like, see, Dana, I just get in my head, get out of my head. It's just amazing. Okay, carry on.
Yeah,
These are blue
because I
blocks.
want to estimate ahead of time. If I think I'm going to get all these things done during a week, I don't
Mm.
want to feel bad about myself at the end of the week that I didn't get those things done. I
Yeah.
want to be realistic about
Yeah.
like, how much time would those things really take? Do I have that time this week? So that
Mm-hmm.
if I say I'm not going to do those things, if I say I don't have the time, there's something else that's more important, then I'm intentionally pulling that off my list. And so then I
Yeah.
can feel good at the end of the week about being, okay, I chose to focus my time on certain things, as opposed to I just have this really long list of things that I never got to.
Yeah. Well, and I think here what's coming up for me is that, and this has been a process for me, but I do this with clients all the time, is to befriend your past and future self, like the version of you who's putting this stuff on the calendar, right? Like
Yeah,
that's like one version of you. Then there's the version who has to execute. Like, don't be an a-hole to your future self where you're like, right. And I think
yeah,
when you talk about that freedom, we forget that we're the ones who put it on the calendar. But a lot of times, like our executive brain, we're like,
yeah.
we come in a little draconian and we're like, here's my schedule. We're like super
We do.
and we're not
Yeah.
realistic or kind to the
Yeah.
version of us who's going to
And then
execute.
and then we get that rebellion. And so another
Yeah.
piece of the planning
Yeah.
process for each of these that is as important as deciding what you're doing, it's reflecting back.
Yep.
So again, this goes back to our iterative process. We're going
Uh-huh.
to be like,
Hmm.
that doesn't work for me.
Yep.
Like me blocking off every moment of time for things and not giving myself breaks and not having time to move things
Yep.
around.
Hmm.
And it turns out like I put focus time at a time of day that I'm really tired and I don't really
Yeah.
want to focus. And
Yep.
so how do I learn from those things as to when do I want to do things?
Yeah.
Because like you said, I think that's so important is we were the ones who said we wanted to do those things.
Right.
So what's the disconnect
Yep.
with the past and the present
Yeah.
selves? And so how do we make
Yeah.
make all parts of ourselves happy
Yep.
so that we're doing the things we want to be doing, but we're also allowing ourselves to do the things that we truly end up wanting to do?
Yeah, and I want to just like double down on the decide, you saying decide and iterate. And I have to say, I love acronyms. And I have one for the, I call decide is the DILY method.
I love
Decide,
it.
implement, learn, iterate, right? And I think the spirit behind that is what you're talking about here is like we have like a theoretical, like I
Yeah.
think that if I operate this way, I'm gonna get the most out of me. But
Yes.
like so like that's my theory. I test it out and then I find like
Yeah.
for me, I will share like yeah, I'm like, put it all in there. Power through. We love a good power through, just get it done. But I find like, oh, actually, if I take a little break and I go float in the pool,
Yeah.
and then I come back and I'm a little more resourced, I actually get more done in a less amount of time and I get
Yes.
more juiciness. I get more
Yes.
creativity out of myself.
Yes.
But like my theoretical version was like, no, no, just get it done and then you can go play,
Right.
right? Versus that might be a part of my productivity strategy
It is.
that I did not know if I wasn't willing to experiment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that example. It
Yeah.
rings so true. I
Yeah.
think so many times I'm working with people and they're working, most of the people I work with are not 9 to 5. They
Yeah.
work long hours, all
Yeah.
of those things. And they know that that's a part of their job. And so one of the things we do a lot of the times is figure out what are those breaks? What are those, reintegration moments that you need? Maybe it's just going for a quick walk. Maybe
Hmm.
it's making sure that you're stretching every time you're getting up to go to the bathroom. Like, I
Right.
don't care what it is, but you need to figure out a way to nurture yourself during the day so that you can be your best self.
Yeah.
Because science really shows that once we are heads down for too long, it's diminishing. And when we get to
Yeah.
the point where more time does not give us more, then we want to recalibrate and we want to
Right.
start playing around with, again, those breaks, what time of day you're good for. Like, what is a productive time block for you?
Right.
How best works. And so feeling like you have the freedom to play around with that
Yeah.
and figure out like how is all of this going to work best is really kind of the magical formula.
Yeah, I was like, this is where it gets juicy, right? Like, like when you
Totally.
talk about like time, sometimes it's like this is very sterile and corporate-y. I'm like, really, what we've just talked about here is I have to make everything relational. To me, like this is self-exploration, really. Like you're really understanding what works for me, what do I like, what don't I like, how do I get the most out of me, where do I start to diminish? Y'all, this is just a self-relationship practice. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because and I think it's two things. I think, again, we should learn from the science of things that are going on, but we have to, again, look at our own experiences.
Yeah.
We know that people are different. And so
Turns
this
out,
this
you heard it here
idea
first, y'all. Yeah,
So this idea that what works for one person is going to work for everybody is ridiculous, but it
yeah,
doesn't mean you shouldn't try on something that you think might not work for you
right.
because you're probably going to learn something that you wouldn't have otherwise experienced.
Yeah, be willing to be wrong. How's that? Like,
Be
just get
willing to
everybody
be.
really nauseous. Uh-huh. So, okay, under the anything else under the productivity, we have the
So that
planning.
is the gist of
Okay,
productivity.
okay.
Again, we want to be effective. We are working on the right things from our
Hmm.
clarity, and we are working on them in the right way.
Okay.
And the last section is turns out we don't do anything alone. And so it's relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is kind of all aspects of our life. How are we relating to the people who we work with, we work for, who work for us, who are stakeholders on projects that we are doing? And so being able to use, again, that clarity piece about what is important to us and
Uh-huh.
what is important to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then learning some techniques for, giving people the benefit of the doubt, being curious in our conversations. So using techniques and tools like that helps us be better in our relationships, and
Mm-hmm.
it opens up relationships so that people are supporting us. People are coming up with things that will help us, and vice versa, in a
Mm-hmm.
way that is going to make us greater than any one of us is going to be as individuals.
Okay, synergy for the win. All right.
Synergy for the
So
win.
career control framework. Am I getting it
Yes.
right? Yeah. clarity, productivity, relationships.
Exactly.
Right, got it. We've got this on lock. We've all got it figured out now. Great. Thanks, Dana. The other thing, as we're kind of talking about time and productivity, what I hear a lot, and maybe you hear this too, is like this story of like, I don't have time, or another one of like, I'm behind. I'm always behind. Yeah. So where do you start with folks who feel like they're drowning, they can't catch a breath? What's the starting point for that?
I know. It's a little bit challenging, but
Mhm.
sometimes I like to start with the idea of insert terrible incident here. You
Uh-huh.
are hit by a bus
Yeah.
and you cannot do anything on your calendar. It is suddenly having to be cleared.
Uh-huh.
So kind of having that idea of like, okay, so what would you do? What would you figure out how to get all of those things moved onto somebody else? I'm not saying you have to do it.
Yeah.
Let's explore the idea of none of these things actually have to be done and be
Hmm.
done by me.
Ooh. Okay, that's fun.
And so
Delegation
and
strategies.
so
Okay.
then we are starting to think about what kind of a day, what kind of a week, all of those things would I create if I were
Mm,
coming in fresh and if I were
mm,
starting from this cleared schedule. What are the things that are really important? Because a lot of times what we're doing is we are doing things because we've always done them,
mm-hmm,
and starting to reevaluate those. Maybe they need to be done, maybe they don't. Maybe they can
mm-hmm,
be done in a very different way that is
mm-hmm,
not so demanding on us. Maybe they can be done by somebody else.
uh-huh. Whoop, whoop.
Um, so we start to think about like, okay, so how, once I've offloaded these things, what are the things that are important to me? Again, we are leaning hard into our clarity work.
Yep.
Important to me in my roles that I play in my life. Because
Mm-hmm,
again, we are leaning into our relationships there.
mm,
But what are the things that I truly am the expert in? Where is my zone of genius? What is the
mm,
way that I want to be leaning into those things? I think
mm,
that it's really easy for us to get rid of the things that easily don't feel like a fit.
mm-hmm,
But when we look at, for example, the Pareto principle, which I think a lot of people talk about as like the 80-20 rule,
mm-hmm,
if 80% of our results is coming from 20% of our efforts,
mm-hmm,
it doesn't mean that the rest of that 80% isn't good. It
mm-hmm.
actually could be benefiting us in some ways, but it might not be worth it to us to continue with those things and instead focus on that 20%.
Yeah. For those who are not watching this YouTube, we're just having a moment. Yeah. Like it can be like I can feel there was like holding on, right? Like
Yeah.
the things we have to let go of. And I wonder if sort of related in that 80% is because you talked about a zone of genius and
Yep.
then like the zone of excellence, right? That's right next door to our zone of
Yep.
genius. I think a lot of us can get caught like that can take up a lot of our 80% that you're talking about. And right, we're good at it. It can come easy. People praise us for it.
Yeah.
So I'm just
Yeah.
identifying some blocks to releasing it. How do you support? Is it part of it too, just the clarity in noticing what is the difference between my zone of genius and my zone of excellence? And then,
Yeah, I think definitely a part of it is acknowledging that.
yeah,
Again, this is not, for some people, it might be an immediate mindset shift, but
yeah,
for most people, it is not. And
uh-huh,
so we try to winnow away. I mean, if
uh-huh,
you think about it, like when you're dealing with, I don't know about you, but I have some piles of paper in my apartment that I've been trying to go through.
yeah,
And there are those ones where, like, when I sort through it, there's some stuff that's just really easy to take away.
uh-huh,
That I can recycle it. Those are not things that I need to
uh-huh,
do. And so sometimes it does make sense to like, let's take off that layer first. Let's
yeah,
not worry about this stuff that's a little tricky. Like
yeah,
maybe I'm not differentiating between the stuff that I need to do now versus need to do later versus maybe I don't need to do, but
uh-huh,
I'm not sure.
mm,
And so I think for some people it is that approach of then the next time we go back to that list,
uh-huh,
then things might become a little more clear.
yeah,
So there's kind of two approaches. So there's
yeah,
that where we're going back and we're kind of peeling off a layer each time. And then as we're doing that, we're realizing like, oh, that was great. There was benefit to that. And now I'm seeing some new things and opportunities that I can go to.
yeah,
Versus the other approach, which is let's throw it all out
right,
and
uh-huh,
let's start from scratch. My goals are not the same goals as they used to be. What I'm doing should not be the same as what I used to be doing. And
Uh-huh.
so, how do I intentionally, instead of taking things away one by one, bring things in one by one?
The Marie Kondo approach.
The Marie Kondo approach. Yes, if it
Yeah.
doesn't spark joy, we are done with it.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And so do you use both of those? You're like, we could
I,
try either, just
I
whichever one
do.
works. Yeah.
I do. Because most people just aren't ready for those big leaps.
Uh-huh.
Occasionally, we'll get somebody who is at a huge transition point in their life
Yeah.
and they are ready for that sort of conversation. But I
Yeah.
think it's a little bit of a push-pull between those two approaches so that
Mm-hmm.
people can start to understand that, again, we are not behind.
Yeah.
We are exactly where we are. And if we start
Mm-hmm.
today and each day and moment as day one, where we can make new choices as
Yeah.
to what we are looking to do,
Yeah.
um, again, we're going to learn more information. We're going to make a different choice tomorrow. But
Yeah.
each moment, just because we've said we were going to do something, doesn't mean we have to do it. So
Yeah.
having some of that permission that we
Mm-hmm.
go into those that like, okay, why is this on my list? What is
Mm-hmm.
the purpose? What is this fulfilling? And so
Mm-hmm.
is it really creating that in my life?
Yeah. And something you said when you were talking about the like peeling things off like one by one. You said something like, yeah, sort of, you didn't, I don't think you said trust, but just the idea of trusting that when you do it that way and then you come back, you might have more clarity. Right.
Yes.
And I think I was like, that's just a great mind, just like a little reframe. Like it's possible that if I do this little by little, I will have greater clarity as I
Yes.
get further into this versus what I would think my theoretical is like, oh, it's going to get harder the closer I
Right.
get to the things where I'm undecided about, right? When you're talking about mail, you're like, oh, that's
Yeah.
recyclable. These are easy. This is easy. But when I get rid of the fluff, then it's going to be the hard decisions versus, oh, it's possible though that when I get there, when
Hmm.
there's more clutter removed, there's more
Yes.
clarity. It might be
Yes.
easier.
Yes. And I think that
Okay.
we are beings where we want to have everything 100% figured out to move forward. And that's one of the
Yeah.
things that,
Uh-huh.
again, we want to start to reframe.
Uh-huh.
Moving forward gives us the information that we need in
Yeah.
order to continue that journey.
Yeah.
But if we start here and think we need to have it all figured out before we even take that first step, we're never going to move. So by
Yep.
taking that first step, you learn more information, you get more experience. You're like, I let that go and that was great. That
Yep.
actually feels good to me. But here's
Hmm.
what I learned, and here are the other
Yep.
things that I'm willing to let go of.
Yep.
And so we want to keep moving in. We want to keep kind of planning and reflecting on those. We want to dilly.
Yeah. Yeah, we want to dilly. Well, because you can't know it from it's like I always
You
think about
can't.
the imagery of if you're in New York and you're like trying to do a cross country road trip to California and you're like, why can't I see Las Vegas? And you're like, no,
Right.
of course you cannot,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah. Requires a little trust, a little gag and go, a little courage, bleh, a little
Exactly.
nausea.
And
Uh-huh.
we might shift things along the way.
Yeah.
Again, that's why we want to have both that North Star about where do we think we're going? We're
Yeah.
going across country, but
Yeah.
we also want to be able to stop. If we see the biggest yarn ball on our journey across country, like do it.
Yes, ma'am. When I planned a cross-country road trip, did I plan it around like the world's largest ball of, the world's largest frying pan, like
Right.
every, we're going to stop at all of them. Is it a straight line? No, ma'am.
No,
We're
no, it is
taking a
not. But we are
zigzag.
having joy in our lives all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of joy, let's talk about like sort of the reclamation process because you talk about like being in control versus like your career controlling you. And so what are some of those maybe from the mindset side, like what are some of the biggest mindset shifts that you see when people start to reclaim that power instead of you kind of mentioned it before, like it's happening at me versus I am now in control. What starts to shift that helps you get to that place?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. The two things that happen is one is people really think that they were clear, and
Mm,
yet as
uh-huh.
soon as they start actually focusing on that, there is just a shift in that awareness of,
Mm,
oh, actually, this is what is important to me, and yet I'm not spending any time on it. This is what
yeah.
important to me, and yet I'm not
Yeah.
focusing on those things. And
Hmm.
because of that, people find that they have more time.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So as you get that clarity, and again, with that, pile of junk paper, you're able to
Hmm.
clear those things off much more easily.
Hmm.
And again, I do think it is that people come to me for their professional lives, but it is that whole life picture.
Hmm.
We have jobs to support the life we want to live and not vice versa. So
Mic drop right there and just underline. And if anyone needed to take away, say it again for the people in the
yeah,
back.
We have worked to support the life we want to live
Yeah.
and not vice versa.
Yeah.
So we are not living our lives to sustain ourselves to go into our work, whether you
Mhm.
are working in an organization, self-employed, whatever. This
Mhm.
is to create the kind of life we want.
Mhm.
And so by having that ability to step back and have that perspective, we are much more able to, again, create the life we want long term, but bringing it into our day to day. How do we not delay everything as to someday my weeks will be more calm? Someday I will
Yep.
have time for this. No. How do we bring it into our lives today while
Yeah.
still looking at some of those longer term
Well,
goals?
yeah, because that's when you get into I call it the arrival fallacy, right? Where it's like, it's the horizon. It is ever moving. When
Exactly.
we play with that someday game, like, oh,
Exactly.
someday I'm going to magically be a whole different person when I get to this arbitrary. Yeah.
Right.
You're like, start being
Right.
that person
Yeah.
now.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, we know that life sometimes has other plans for us.
So
And
rude.
so if we are putting things off
Yeah.
for this magical someday arrival point,
Hmm.
we may not actually get to even where we think that is.
That's right. Okay, so if there's someone who's listening right now and they're like, okay, I want to stop the hustle and grind. I want to start leading my life, my career with
Yeah.
more clarity and control. What's like if you're like, here is the trailhead, like the baby step, here's like the one shift that you could start making that would make a big difference.
Yeah. So for me, the very first thing that I work with most of my clients on, and I will offer to everyone as a free gift, is in fact the Better Week Blueprint.
Okay.
And so we'll include a link to that in the show notes, but it's at danazellers.com/better week.
Okay.
And what this is really, it's just a template and a structure to start being intentional about what our weeks look like so
Mm-hmm.
that we are thinking at each of those moments what we want to prioritize, what else is going on. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it's giving us a process for that reflection
Yep.
so that we can then look back and say, huh, how did that work for me?
Yep.
How can I bring more of the good stuff that I'm doing in? How can I start, fine tuning some of the stuff that I feel like isn't working as much for me? So that
Mm-hmm.
again, the goal is to not just have goals that we're moving towards, but to feel good about how we are spending our time and
Mm-hmm.
what we are getting out of it.
Yeah, and again, I want to just underline that last part. I think something I see so people miss is the kind of the quote unquote evaluation part, right?
Yes.
Like you set your calendar, like what one of my former mentors called it Monday hour one and then Friday hour done,
Yeah.
right? But it's the same thing with any goal. And like you're like, yeah, I set out to do this, but did I do a look back to see, okay, what did work? What do I want to do differently? What
Right.
didn't work? And being willing to fine tune, like you said, I think a lot of us skip that part. Like we have this great plan and
Yeah.
just keep going for it, and then we don't stop to do the
Yeah, and then
check-in.
we keep
Yeah,
going. And the other piece of that I think you intimated too is this idea of we actually don't even celebrate the things that we're doing well.
right.
And so we look at it and we're like,
Yeah,
oh, I did nothing last week. And it's like,
right.
really?
Yeah.
So
Really? Like let's look back here. Yeah, yeah,
how do
yeah,
we start celebrating the
yeah,
things that are good? Not just for joy, but for appreciation of like, oh,
yeah.
these things are working. We tend to be so negativity biased that we're
Yep,
really only looking at the things that we're not doing. We're not looking at all of the things that we are accomplishing and getting
yep,
done. And so having that reflection process, not only to keep improving, but to really know what we're doing well, I
yep.
think is a piece that a lot of people tend to skip over.
Yeah, and that can be a whole separate episode. Like the number of people I coached just today on like the nausea that comes when it's just acknowledging what did I do well. It's a
Yes,
whole skill set, friend. So if you are there,
it
it's fine.
is. It
We'll
is.
hold your hand through it. And just know, like, it sounds like, oh, we want to receive support. We want to acknowledge the things that we do. So we assume that that should come naturally to us.
Yeah.
And it does not. It's something to be intentional
Yeah.
about. So,
Yeah. We have to practice all of these things. I
yep,
mean, I think, I talked a little bit earlier about sometimes we have to decide this is just a muscle that I haven't
yeah,
been using. And so
yep,
again, I want to use some of these techniques, but I want to practice. I want
yep.
to get in the habit of doing some of those things again to recognize and feel better about how I'm spending my time.
Yeah, yeah, all bold prints to that. Like we forget the number of times I say, like, this is a skill. Like, because
Yep.
we often can think in fixed mindset, we're like, oh, it's just this innate thing that I either have or I don't. I'm either
Yeah.
good with time or I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm an organized person or I'm not.
Right.
It's a muscle. It's a
Yeah. It's a
skill. It can
muscle.
be learned. Yes, ma'am. Okay, before I ask you my very last question, please tell the listeners the best way to connect with you, the work that you do so they can follow along and get access to you.
Yes, absolutely. I am currently offering a number of promotions. You can reach out to me at danazellers.com.
Mhm.
You can find me on LinkedIn at Dana-Zellers and Instagram at Dana_Zellers. I would love to continue the conversation with everyone and again, share more about what I do and how I work with people on a regular basis.
Amazing. And now for the question, Dana, that I love to ask all of my guests. What does it mean to you to live an unblocked life?
An unblocked life. Well, you are not going to be surprised by sort of as I lean into this, my answer. I think that unblocked life is, for me, it is about envisioning all of the possibilities that are available to me
Mhm.
and feeling good that I'm making choices as to how I want to be spending my time and my energy. Again, I don't want to be trapped by past me and the choices that
Mhm.
I've made. I want to make sure that I am considering really how I want to be living my life now and where I think I want to go in the future so that I'm planting some seeds that I'll see what they grow into.
Yeah, that sounds like freedom. I dig it.
Freedom.
Yes. Dana, thank you so much for sharing your time, your resources, your information, your wisdom and experience with us. I got so much value. I am certain that the listeners will as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. This was such a fun conversation. I do think we have so much of the same thinking, and it was just great to play in that sandbox.
Little twinning brains. All right. Thank
Exactly.
you again, Dana.